He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Ti hewa mauri ora ki te taiao, ki te whaiao, ki te ao maramaki au we. Ti hewa mauri ora ko Māpuna tēnei mihi atuana kia koutou katoa i tēnei rā. Nau mai hoki mai and welcome back to Māpuna the podcast, where today we're talking football. Well, not just football, but mainly based on football. Why? Because our guest today has had a long career attached to football, but also in management, as well as media and communications, and is now the general manager of Auckland City FC. Not to be confused with Auckland FC, the big club, playing in many championships, along with the Phoenix in the Australian Football League at the moment. No. This is Auckland City FC, the club that's based at Kiwitea Street in Sandringham, not far from Mount Albert. Auckland City FC, he's their general manager. His name is Gordon Watson. Brought up in Palmerston North, he's a Ngāpuhi on his mother's side, who was a Brown from Māpuna. And his father was a Scottish man. Both of them were playing soccer and football when he was a baby. In fact, he was still in his mother's womb and she was playing goalie for Manawatu women's team when his father found out that she was hapu with Gordon. So he really had no choice, actually, but to be involved in football. Now, there is a bit of trauma attached to the reasons why he continued in the game, but has led him to 3 FIFA World Cups, to meetings and discussions with people like Lionel Messi, considered by some to be the greatest footballer of all time, Cristiano Ronaldo, still considered to be one of the top 5 players of all time, Zinedine Zidane, one of the greatest players in football history, and many others. He's also won Māori Sports Administrator of the Year awards. As I said, he's been in media and comms, and now he's involved deeply in the world of amateur football. So how's it going? How do we in the country value voluntary associations, local clubs, sports clubs, those kinds of things? And what was it like being there with Tim Cahill after he scored an amazing goal in a World Cup for Australia over the head with a volley against the Netherlands in a World Cup? All that and more in this awesome discussion with Gordon Watson. I'm sure you'll find it interesting and also reflective, and helping you remember the 1982 New Zealand football team that went to the World Cup. Gee, I remember all that with Steve Sumner and Frank Van Hattem. Anyway, all of that and more on this podcast, the Māpuna podcast with Gordon Watson, the General Manager of Auckland City FC. E te iwi whakarongo mai. Kia ora and welcome. As I said, our guest is someone that's well known within Auckland City itself. He is with Auckland City FC, and is someone who has been working in football for a long time. His name, of course, is Gordon Watson. He joins me now. Gordon, thank you for joining us. Really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for inviting me along.
Welcome to the show. You have worked in football for a number of years in various roles, mostly related to football. Why football?
I was raised in a football household in Palmerston North in the 1970s. My late father was born in Glasgow, Scotland, a World War II veteran who relocated here. My mother was from up north, Opua, and they met and had a whānau, and I came along quite late in the piece. I'm the youngest of 6. There's a big age gap between myself and the rest, and they were both involved in football in the local community and both very passionate about it. It was in our household all the time, and it was a natural choice for me.
I don't know if you remember, back when I was playing football as a kid, 6, 7, 8, there was a big tournament they always used to have in Palmerston North. It was on the grounds not far from the bridge, and all the teams from Wellington and Hutt Valley used to come up and play in Manawatu. There were some good teams in those days too. We used to get smacked all the time, and I couldn't tell you why, actually. And we had guys like Greg Smith, who was on the Fleming's Musi Bar ad, I don't know if you remember. Right. He was in our team. We got wasted, and I don't know why, but Manawatu was quite a big football city.
Well, look back in the day, in the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of immigration from the UK, traded people with skill sets in that blue-collar world, and Hawke's Bay, Manawatu, and Taranaki were strongholds. Waikato as well, Huntly. So they had coal miners and electricians, and they brought with them their culture and their way of doing things and their sport, which happened to be football. And that was really the seed that was planted, I guess, for the sport back in
Were
those days.
you much of a player in the game?
Well, I mean, it all depends how you want to look at it. I played in the National League here. I played in the State League in Australia. And I played in the 6th tier in England in 2000, 2001.
Still pretty good level of football, though.
Yeah. I was okay. I played alongside All Whites and against international players and professional teams from time to time, but never quite good enough to make a national team. But it gave me a unique insight. I ended up coaching and then working in the media side of it, which was fantastic because, to have anything to do with football was a thrill and a privilege and an honour as I saw it. So that's really the brief playing career. And I had a brief coaching career of about 3 years.
What was the continual draw, though, of football? Because football went through a few phases, right? Mm-hmm. And particularly in the New Zealand context.
Yeah.
Obviously, there were those halcyon days in the 80s and the World Cups and Winton Roofers and those kind of things. But what was the continued draw to the game for you that just kept you associated? I mean, even now your eyes go wide when you talk about it.
Well, actually, there's probably a sad story behind the continuation. So the 1982 FIFA World Cup was what got me hooked because New Zealand qualified.
Yeah.
They were drawn in Scotland's group, so in our household, being Scottish and
Of course,
Māori.
yes, I remember.
Right,
Yeah.
so they played the first game, and my father and I we were very close anyway, but as a result of that fixture at the World Cup and it being on TV and the 15 games that the All Whites played, that was me. My father passed away in 1986, and he had a heart attack, and I was 13 and I did CPR on my father.
Wow.
Unsuccessfully. And so from that point on, anything around football, I was absolutely dedicated to it because it helped keep my father's memory alive. I mean, it's really as basic as that.
Wow.
And going from intermediate to high school without your father is a big deal. So for me, football was an out, and my father's family in Scotland would write letters. His cousin Harry was a Rangers fan who would go and watch games in Scotland. He would send me newspaper articles, videos, match programs, and that just kept the fire going. And I never really looked back after that, So a lot of it's to do with having that connection with my late father. But also Mum was coaching. She was still coaching after Dad had passed away, the Massey University women's team. And she loved the game too, and we could sort of share those memories and experiences together, yeah.
What was Dad's name again? Sorry,
David Glenn Watson was my father's name. Born in Glasgow, August 1921.
Did he make that 86 World Cup? Did he see that 86?
No, the dream was that we would both go. And I always knew as a kid that we didn't have the money for that, but it was a dream. And I always felt the aspiration of being able to go to the World Cup. Oh, we're going to go to Mexico in 86. Yeah, we'll try. But it was never going to happen. But at least, I had that to look forward to. And then he passed away 6 months after that World Cup.
Oh, gee.
So I guess I didn't know at the time, how could I? But World Cups were going to be in my destiny one way or the other. And that's how it turned out.
Yeah. Gee, that and you talk about 82. Gee, it's all coming back to me now. That 82 World Cup. One of my favourite players was a guy called Frank Van Hatten. I can't tell you why, but that team, iconic team, in 82, and then that 86 World Cup. Wow, the Mexico World Cup. What a World Cup that was. There's always something about football, as you say, that kind of just draws people in. Obviously, that's a sad circumstance, but even the World Cups themselves are just amazing tournaments. But you've had the privilege of actually being involved in them directly. Yeah. Can I talk about the South African
Yeah,
World
absolutely,
Cup? I was in South Africa in the build-up, and I was actually meant to interview Madiba. And the day that we landed was the day, and you may remember this because you would have been involved, I think his granddaughter passed away. She was involved in a car accident. And we went to his house in Mvezo. We got there, and the wife and the grandson came out, Amatla, and they said he'd just gone to go back to, I think it was Joburg, because of the granddaughter's funeral and process and that kind of thing. And the country, South Africa was just, and I think possibly following on from 95 World Cup, but the country was just at this fever pitch, everywhere you went. I was driving out in Mvezo and people were wearing different countries' jerseys, in a place like South Africa. I found that amazing. What was it like to be involved?
A privilege to be involved, and not just professionally but personally, because I got to experience South Africa and South Africans up close, under pressure, having fun, feeling sad. So when you're in that environment, you can't help but become emotionally engaged. So I met South African people in the townships. I was in Alexandria, Tembisa as well, because I was attached to the North Korean team as their media attaché for FIFA.
Oh, yeah.
So they were based very far out of Johannesburg, and then they chose the most remote team base camp, which was Tembisa, which is there's 1 million people in Tembisa, and there's a lot of poverty. But it was an amazing experience, both to be with Korea DPR and also so close to the World Cup, and to see what it meant to the people of that township to have the FIFA World Cup sitting in their township. I met a lot of white South Africans as well, and I learned a lot. I had a tremendous relationship with the South African police from a security point of view around media operations. Made some very good friends, and learned a lot about the country through their eyes. And also, like, one of the most interesting things was a police officer, Afrikaans guy, who was very, very conservative in his views of the world. Oh, yeah. And he spoke bluntly, and I like everything to be honest and upfront. So there was no, I just listened and got to know his point of view, shared mine. And right at the very end of the World Cup, I think it was the last day that I was going to be there, he said to me, "Do you know what, Gordon?" He said, "I've got a grandson." And I said, "Is that right?" He goes, yeah. He says, "There's nothing I wouldn't do for that boy." And I said, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense." I said, "Have you got a photo?" So he pulls his wallet out, and then he showed me a photograph of this child, and he was black South African.
Wow.
Right? And I said to him, "Oh, he's a good-looking boy." And he said, yeah, he is. And I said, "But given everything you've said to me
and
about..."
his conservative approach to the world. And we know what that means.
Yes, exactly. I read between the lines. I said, given those views and given your grandson and this photograph, how do you not justify it, but how do you sort of deal with that? And it goes, "Yeah, Gordon, this is Africa. This is how this is." He goes, "It's just the way of the place." And that was something I took away from that. So I'm trying not to be quick to judge. Yeah. But the World Cup was amazing, to go back to that. The vuvuzelas drove people nuts.
Absolutely nutty, yeah.
But I didn't mind it, because it was their expression of their football culture. Yeah. And it was amazing. It was an amazing experience, once in a lifetime, especially being with North Korea. And
I was going to say, how do you get... And I think I said 2014, it was 2010. We'll come to 2014. Yeah. We'll come to 2014. But 2010, I think, was the year of the South African World Cup. North Korea. How did you land that gig?
Well, it's interesting, because at the time, FIFA had appointed a South Korean to the delegation because of the cultural and linguistic skills. Right. And I believe Korea DPR objected to FIFA and said, "We don't want somebody from the Republic to be involved."
So let's give you this Ngāpuhi from Northern New Zealand.
And that's what I did. So I got an email essentially in December of 2009 saying, "We'd like you to be part of the FIFA World Cup." Well, yes, of course, I agree, right, without looking at the detail. And then they send you the mission, and it said FIFA media officer attached to the team of Korea DPR. And I thought, how am I going to do this? What does that even mean for a start? Yeah. So I got an email address for the Football Association of that nation, and I tried to initiate a communication to learn as much as I could, but I think it was a Hotmail address. and it was very, you can imagine, the two-line emails, very infrequent. And it wasn't until we hit the ground running at Midrand, where I met the delegation, that the fun and the adventure of that tournament began for me. Wow. The players were just, my reflection of it is always that they were just a normal group of young men who wanted to do their best at the FIFA World Cup. And I connected with, the staff members and some of the players on that basis. If you reach for the common ground, that makes everything a lot easier. It doesn't matter where you're from, because you have this universal language of football. And love for the game. Yeah, love for the game, and they love the game. Like the goalkeeper, I think it was a goalkeeping coach, and I used to play keepy ups before training would start. And maybe that's not the most professional thing to do in a suit, during a World Cup. But we did it, and it helped create relationships where we built trust, because coming from a isolated country into a FIFA World Cup environment, there's a lot to, a lot of paperwork and a lot of protocols that they hadn't had experience of since 1966.
Yeah, but also dealing with, I suspect, some of the questions that media may ask of team. I mean, how do you strategise and plan? Because it's hard to take politics out of sport, particularly football. Mm-hmm. How do you approach that? Because you also would feel some responsibility and want to protect these players too, right? Because as you say, they're just footballers who have the love of the game and they're at the World Cup. What was that like, having to even plan for that and deal for that?
It was difficult in the middle. At the start, it actually it kind of ran itself. When we were in Tembisa for trainings and such, the questions that were asked tended to be from Portuguese and Brazilian media who were asking football questions. Yeah. When we got to Cape Town, there were more UK and European media there, and they were more interested in the red top tabloid type questions, which then started to throw up front pages with cartoons on them, sort of mocking the oddness or otherness of career DPR. And we had a very prickly press conference in Cape Town where a journalist asked, does Kim Jong-un pick your team? And there was silence, and I was sat next to the coach and their media officer, and there was a bit of a conflab going on. And then they asked me off mic, do we have to answer that question? And I said, actually, no, you don't. Mm. But the coach just went ahead and said, yeah, he does. And the way he said it, as I learned, was more sarcastically. Yeah. But nobody in the audience is going to pick that as a joke coming from a North Korean delegate.
Sarcasm might not be something that people know much about.
Yeah, if you say it in English, then everyone goes, he's taking the mickey a wee bit. But everybody then wrote that, and that appeared in, I think, the Sun or the Daily Mail or whatever. And then the problems began because they lost the second game to Portugal 7-0. And the wheels came off that campaign. But, it was a tough press conference. I learned a lot from that experience as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 2014, Brazil. Mm-hmm. Did you hang out with Lionel Messi?
I solved a media operations problem with Lionel Messi. Yeah. Argentina were not allowing Messi to do mixed zone interviews or as little post-match as possible. And they played Nigeria. I think we were in, might have been Porto Alegre. And, the message came through from HQ, you've got to get Messi in the mixed zone. Well, how do you do that? Do you grab him? Do you go and have a confrontation?
And we've seen those social media videos of his bodyguards too, by the way.
Exactly. So, but look, I mean, I'm not kidding. The climate around the Argentinian football team is crazy.
Let alone him. Yeah.
So the staff are very controlling around everything around him, and regardless of whether you're with FIFA, they will always die on that hill. So essentially it came down to there was a small group of us talking about it. There were three other FIFA media officers from different countries, multilingual, and we were in the dressing room and they were saying, how do we get him to go through the mix zone? And I said, well, it's actually it's more simple than you think. Now, there was a couple of doors at the back of the dressing room that led into the corridor that go to the bus.
Oh, yeah.
Right, because the stadium was brand new. Yeah. And the walkway to the mix zone for Messi, or for all the players, came out another door into the tunnel and then through this other door. So theoretically, you could go out the back door, run to the bus, and then that's it, game over, you've missed the opportunity. So I pulled the door handles, and because it's a new stadium and it had only just been finished, the door handle came off. And then I held the door handle in my hand. I said, well, there's the answer. And they went, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, that's now a wall. It's not a door.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that door's not getting opened. So he's only got to come the one way. That's what happened. the argument was, well, isn't that a fire hazard? And I said, look, if there's a fire in the stadium, the first 46 people out the door are going to be the two squads, right?
Yeah.
So just go with it and we'll see what happens. And he went through the mix zone because he had no other choice. There's no other way to go. And so sometimes we can overcomplicate strategies with, do you speak this language, or, do you speak that language? But sometimes it's actually just being napui and just saying, right,
just being napui.
Yeah, just take the handle off.
Do you pinch yourself now, thinking about it? I mean, I know Messi's not the only... there's all this stuff about who the greatest player ever was, and it could have been him or Maradona or even Cristiano Ronaldo, who I know you've also encountered. And Zinedine Zidane is someone else, and we'll talk about those. But, I mean, it must just be kind of surreal. Just, palmy boy.
Oh, yeah. Surreal? Yeah, I mean, look, you don't have time to think about that
when
while
you're
it's
doing
happening.
The job. Yeah.
You have to, I suppose there's a level of dissociation that has to occur because there's kind of a lot of voices going on in your head. There's the
problem
solving at the hot end of a World Cup. You could be dealing with 10, 15, 20 people all speaking different languages, all upset, all angry, all competing for whatever it is they want, and then having to service and manage that complexity. And then you've got a top world football player in the mix, and you need to have them ideally in a certain frame of mind and attitude so that the media get what they've come to the World Cup and what they've paid for. But there are other views that are going on simultaneously, which is the boy from Palmerston North who got into football because of his mum and dad, and he's thinking, you couldn't make this up. Just be cool, be
that's
calm.
That's what's coming to me now.
Yeah.
Is that I mean, if you were to think about anyone who plays the game, anyone who's involved in football, or even has a passing interest, you mention those names. Those are the names that people go, yeah, that'd probably be the top for me. If I could just even get within 100 yards, I'd be pretty sorted.
Well, look, one of my mentors in the FIFA media officer team said to me in my very first tournament, because I asked him, how do you keep coming back to these? And he said, well, do you think you deserve to be here? And I went, no, not really. And he goes, well, that's the right answer. He said, because I don't deserve to be here either. He said, there's 45 of us, but there's 6 billion at that time. There were 6 billion people in the world. And he said, there's millions of people could do our job if they're given the opportunity. Yeah. So that's why you're the least important person here. And so as a young practitioner, hearing that, I was just full of gratitude. So I said to, his name's Les Dickens, I said to Les, thank you so much. And he said, you've got to stop thanking me. He said, I'll share my knowledge. But he said, the key thing for you to thank me is to pass your knowledge on to people so that they can be enhanced and that they can have the opportunities to enjoy what you're enjoying.
Yeah.
And if you happen to get asked back, wonderful. But if not, well, you got one World Cup and you should be grateful for it. And that's the attitude I took all the way through the past 20 years, basically.
How many World Cups did you do again?
3 senior FIFA World Cups. I was asked to be part of 4. I think 13 Club World Cups, 2 Under-20 World Cups, a Confederations Cup, a Rugby World Cup, a Cricket World Cup. I've lost count of the number of international competitions to be over 100. Easy.
Why media?
Yeah, good. So I never wanted to be a journalist, right? But I was very good.
None of us wants to be a journalist.
Right. Okay. So I guess it comes from my mother and my father's oratory. They were very erudite communicators. And I think in my father's case, growing up in a time in Scotland where it was radio and newspapers, so if someone said to you, have you been to the game? And you make up a story, everybody knows you're making it up. So you need to be accurate and you need to tell it in an exciting way. So if 2 guys standing at the pub in Glasgow, did you see the game? Yes, I did. What do you think? And then they give you a very colourful story. Yeah. I had all those skills too, but I didn't want to be a journalist. And it wasn't until I got to my 30s and the playing was winding down and coaching was coming forward to me as an opportunity. I thought, I don't really want to do it. I'd rather be a coach. And then coaching wasn't so great. And then I just thought, look, I better embrace the skill in this area and see where it takes me. And so I ended up, I was writing for Manawatu Evening Standard, Waikato Times, a couple of midweek and weekend supplements. And then I got a job at Oceania Football Confederation, which was really the big moment where I got exposure to international football in our region with New Zealand football. And very quickly after that followed exposure at FIFA events. My first World Cup was FIFA Under-20 World Cup in Canada in 2007, which was a trial by fire. But it was a good one because it taught me.
Why was it a trial by fire?
We had a very controversial semi-final where players got pepper sprayed by the Toronto Police Force, and it resulted in a massive fight in the mix zone and on the exterior of the stadium.
These are spectators with police.
No, police and players.
Oh, holy heck. Okay.
Yeah. So some of the players from the Chile team that were at the 2014 World Cup were players that were at this incident. It was an international incident. The press conference had the then FIFA president, the Prime Minister of Canada at the time, a Chilean embassy official. It was big. And that was where you saw South American football culture meeting Canadian police culture that had never been exposed to the other, and thinking that they overdid it. Yeah. There's no question about that. But we had to manage the fallout from it.
Was the president at the time of FIFA, was that Mr. Blatter?
Mr. Blatter, yeah.
Interesting guy.
You never really get to know the people that you work with who come from that high up, I guess. I worked with Blatter quite a few times. He was always polite. He was always a good communicator. He spoke a load of languages. But I'd come home from those opportunities, and friends and family say, "What's he like? What's he like?" So I couldn't really tell you, to be honest, because you don't start saying, "Oh, what are you doing at the weekend?" Yeah. There's a barrier between staff and executives, like there has to be in any walk of life. So you just do your best in the moment and hang on tight.
Why didn't you go to the fourth World Cup?
Well, sadly, my mother passed away in October of 2022.
Oh, gee.
She had been suffering from dementia for a number of years, and I was on the list for kata, which was in December. Yeah. And I took a long time to process how I felt about going into that atmosphere off the back of grief. And I guess one of the things as you get older and you learn more about yourself and the world is to become more emotionally aware, and find the language for that. And I came to the conclusion that I was grieving. That was mum away and both my parents gone, and I thought I need to look after myself, actually, and get myself through this.
Decompress a bit, eh?
Yeah. And you can't go into a FIFA World Cup at 75 or 85% even, because you'll get found out. Oh. And, the pressures, I hope it doesn't come across like it's easy. It's not. It's tough. So I recognised that, and I thought, 3 out of 4, that's not bad. And, rugby and cricket as well. So it was actually quite an easy decision in the end.
What was the Rugby World Cup you did?
I did 2011. I was a regional media manager in Rotorua, Hamilton, and then Eden Park, right the way through to the All Blacks narrowly beating France.
Wow.
Yeah.
You would be one of the ones pushing me away, I think.
Yeah, probably. Probably.
The fact you don't remember is probably a good thing. I hope you don't mind, and I do want to get into your current role because it is an important role. There's just a couple of other football anecdotes that my producer's going to kill me for if I don't raise them, which are Gordon Watson, by the way, who is the general manager of Auckland City FC, and we're going to talk about his role. But one that he's mentioned to me, and I think it's really important I raise with you, it's about a Dutch national team and a final against Spain in Johannesburg.
That's right, yeah.
What happened?
Well, I was meant to go home at the end of the group stage. So when North Korea got knocked out, that was meant to be my lot.
This is 2010.
In 2010, yep. I got a phone call from HQ in Johannesburg the day before I was meant to leave, and they said, look, there's a couple of other projects going at the moment. We would like you to do them. So one was Football for Life, which was in Alexandria, which was for under 12s. It was a PR social responsibility tournament that was meant to run right up to the final. And then they asked me if I would join a group of 4 media officers to work with the Dutch in the final. So you do not say no to that.
Yeah,
you can't say
absolutely.
no to it.
Yeah.
That is literally, you think about, your background from Highbury and Monrad Park's just around the corner in Palmerston North, and I played on that public park when I was a child, and then you hear you're on this list. Actually, a friend of mine who was at HQ, he told me in advance, and he said, don't quote me, but I've heard your name chucked around for this game, and I was like, oof.
And do you think, it's not going to happen?
Well, you've got to, because you want to set your expectations at a certain level so you don't get your heart broken. It might not happen.
But you also got to have to prepare, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And then I got the green light, and that was it. I was in with another New Zealander, Priscilla Duncan. Priscilla worked. She's a former football fern. She was in comms at OFC at the time, and we were together running with the Dutch. And what an amazing experience.
Prepping for a World Cup final, wow.
Yeah, Raphael. It was just crazy. You're bumping into Morgan Freeman and
oh my gosh.
Nelson Mandela came down the tunnel.
Oh,
and
you got closer than I did. Oh.
Well, you're looking at the Dutch national team as well, and you've got the De Boer is sitting there in the technical lineup, and Arjen Robben.
Yeah.
But you've got your heart's going 100 miles an hour, but you're keeping everything as cool as you can.
Yeah.
To be professional. But I think for myself, I thought, well, this is. You remember my father and I were going to go to Mexico '86. That was the dream that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
And there it is in 2010. I'm standing there in the final.
Watching that final. Now, that was Spain, right?
Spain, they lost to Spain 1-0.
And they lost because...
Well, Iniesta scored a great goal.
No.
And Arjen Robben missed a couple. Arjen Robben missed 2 one-on-ones. I do remember that.
But there was a red card.
Yes.
And a kung fu kick.
Yes. De Jong. Yep.
What were you thinking? Because surely it's a thought process kind of like going, okay, the game's going okay, and then this happens, and how are we going to deal with this? Or are you at the time going, I didn't believe what I just saw, it didn't happen? Or, when you see that, how do you respond? What's your reaction?
Well, just dispassionately, in fact, because when that tackle happened, and I saw it with the naked eye, my feeling was, that's a red card. If they go down to 10, the chances are high they'll lose. If they lose, they will then have to do all the media activities that are scripted here, and it's a lot harder to get a losing team in a final to be compliant with regulations because their hearts have just been ripped out of their chests. So you have to be professional, and you also have to be a reader of people. And, when their dream has died... and they still have media obligations, you have to look for the opportunities any way and every way you can, but still remain, and this is my personal professional approach to it, is to be empathetic, firm, caring, but firm, and assertive, but caring. Do you know what I mean? It's all of these things.
Though, it's a tough balance.
It is. It's very tough. Yeah.
The other one I have to ask you about is the interaction you had with Cristiano Ronaldo. There's a story I've got about you trading stories with him about Glasgow.
Yeah, well, this is what I'm talking about. It's about establishing trust. So he had played for Portugal against New Zealand at St. Petersburg. I was media operations lead for FIFA at that stadium. He was on the verge of leaving Real Madrid, I think, at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody, all the press, weren't so much interested in that Portugal had beaten New Zealand 4-0. They were interested in which club's he going to. Is it true he's leaving? If so, where? And then they had their own ideas about what that destination looked like. So Portugal had their media team, but they also had a designated special media executive attached to Ronaldo who made essentially like he's his own team within that federation. So they treat him very differently, understandably. he and I had a conversation that was very abrupt. With he was the overdog and I was the underdog in the list of demands, and I had to kind of push back. And when you're in that sort of, it's kind of an ego tussle. It's really boring. But then you think, well, okay, I need to sort of hatch another plan here in case things go awry on that table in front of people. So Ronaldo was in doping, and when I went in to see the...
He means doping testing, Father.
Doping testing, yeah. He wasn't doping. So it was a clean test. And I went in there and just, he was standing waiting his turn because there were other players, and we struck up a conversation. And I think Alex Ferguson was on the verge of retiring, or he had retired 2013, around that time. And so I name dropped, I'll be straight up. And he said, oh yeah, he's like my father, da-da-da-da-da. I said, my father's Glaswegian too, so I know how straight they can be, and how hard they can be, and they can be compassionate. And he was like, oh yeah, it's very much the case. He said, da-da-da. So we're off talking about this. And as we're walking from the drug testing area to the press conference, by the time we're about 40, 50 metres down the corridor, I know that we're going to be okay on the table. There's always a 5% chance of something going wrong, but generally speaking, the tone's been set, and there's he's now in my hands, is the way he'll probably be looking at it. And when we got to the his media executive, he said, well, we're going to do this. And I said, well, look, I've just spoken to him, and there's some leeway, but we will keep it tight and quick, and which is what we did. And that was it. It wasn't the first time I'd bumped into him. He played for Portugal against North Korea, and when we went to the press conference, I was with the head coach of Korea DPR and Carlos Queiroz and Ronaldo. It was really awkward because the game's finished, they won 7-0, and then all of us are in the same lift going from the ground floor to the 5th floor, and one manager's in big trouble, for a lot of different reasons, and these two guys are bouncing because they got 6 points, I think, and they're through. He's preening himself in the mirror, and and there's ecstasy, and then there's depression in this box, but that's part of the layout and part of the job, to be in those surreal environments and meet these people, and just they're people at the end of the day. So there's no you just treat them accordingly.
I think I see now, and understand a little bit more now, the move or the transition, shall I say, from media to management. Because there's a lot of in media trying to control the uncontrollables, particularly when you're dealing with people, and particularly when you're dealing with athletes.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I can see now why the move, because it's still involved in football, but moving to management is very similar in terms of the approach. But the administration's completely different.
Yeah.
Why move into management then?
It was the next logical step. I couldn't do another 20 years media operations and comms solely. I developed a lot of skills along the way that were cross-transferable. And you're right, relationship with athletes is really important in media operations and with coaches under all sorts of pressures. So if you can take that into any sort of management or executive role and use it to great effect. But I think in that transition, there's a lot of excitement and joy for me in having to do that in a different setting that's more complex, that has a wider lens.
Way more complex.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, the media thing kind of got boring. I was commentating for a while, and I lost something in me said I don't feel like doing it anymore. And I thought that would be the absolute joy that I would never change for me. But it did, and I needed to find a new direction. And Auckland City FC, Ivan Vuksic, and everyone at Kiwi Street trusted me with that. And I was very, very happy, very proud to do it, because I'd seen the club grow from 2004 to its present form, and of course the run to the bronze medal at the FIFA Club World Cup in 2014. That was a very, very proud moment. I don't think it will ever be repeated. And yeah, it's a joy to be there. It's like a small family, you know, and I get a lot of joy and satisfaction from it.
How would you describe that level of football in New Zealand now?
If you had asked me that question a year or two ago, I could give you an optimistic and positive, upbeat kind of answer. I would say. Are
you
now,
saying that because of the evolution of Auckland City and that league, or why are you saying that now?
Well, because there's been a reconfiguration of the pyramid.
Yeah, massive reconfiguration.
Yeah. So from where we had an amateur game that went through all levels from OFC up to the FIFA Club World Cup and Intercontinental Cup, we now have the amateur pyramid has been separated off. We have 2 professional clubs in the A-League. We have 2 professional clubs in the OFC Pro League. Those are ring-fenced only for those 3 clubs at the present moment. So what's happening in the pyramid is that a lot of the players who would normally play there haven't made it to the professional levels have gone to Australia. So there's been a movement of players out of the pyramid, which means the standard drops. I think that's inevitable. I think it's sort of basic kind of formula.
Yep.
My concern over the long term may well be that if we keep taking players from the amateur pyramid at the rate in which we're doing it and the rate in which they're leaving, then we don't have currently the standard or the numbers in the amateur game to ensure that the level of the player remains at a certain pitch that they can make the leap into A-League and OFC Pro League.
See, everything I hear in terms of numbers of players, particularly young players playing football now, is continually growing. That's what we get told.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a lot more Māori and Pacifica players now joining at a young age, leaving sports like rugby, joining football now. And that's brought something as well to the game. So what we hear is that the game, at an amateur level, actually should be in a good state because you're getting high numbers of young people. What is happening then? Are they not coming through the pipeline, or anyone with a lot of talent that goes into an academy, say, ends up going, as you say, the route that you just talked about before?
Look, I think the numbers are fine. The numbers are fine. It's about aspiration, right? So if you cut aspiration off, then clubs lack a motivation. So if the clubs lack motivation and take 2 steps back from the standard they were at, then the players that are coming through in those big numbers into amateur clubs arguably are going into environments that are less good than they were. I think that's normal. So for player development, a lot then rests on the shoulders of the player, to then get themselves through that. And if you have a lot of numbers, then by a ratio, some are definitely going to make it. But the long-term prognosis for club health is up in the air. And I would happily have that conversation with anybody on that topic. In the Pro League space and the A-League space, the A-League, look, there's some good things going on there with the 2 clubs that are representing New Zealand. But the overall health of the A-League itself, there's issues, and we saw Western not competing this year. There's been money problems at a wide variety of those clubs. What it is doing, where I think this evolution is happening from the amateur block, is that people in clubs who have normally been volunteers have choices now. They can either take a step back from their amateur club, or they can become consumers of football. And we have to be very careful, because we're a small country of 5.5 million people, right? With relatively good numbers for sport, but still small. Can we afford to have people participating in club football and then expect them to pay for 2 jerseys for mum and dad, 2 jerseys for the kids, a season book times 4? Is that sustainable in the long run? That's a big question. I don't have an answer for that.
Right.
Pro League as well is brand new. It's the pathway to the FIFA Club World Cup. And its construction is interesting because you have 5 circuits in different parts of the Pacific. But some of the participants are playing all of their games away from home. There's not one home game. So there's, how do you get a match day revenue And I guess the revenue for each club is a question.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my view.
This is the shared experience across many sports, right, about revenue for club. But the other thing that I hear, so I live not far the road from Kiwi Street, and have seen myself for years that I've been in Auckland, that Kiwi Street is still an experience that people want to go and participate in. It's still something that people look forward to,
Yeah.
And so the romanticised version of that, if you want to watch the pure sport, that's where you go. And there are still those people that do that. But are you saying that those numbers are starting to dwindle, or are you saying that these are the issues that you're going to have to deal with? This is the main thing facing you now for the next 3 years, about trying to keep interest in the game so numbers still turn up.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you take the National League Championship final between ourselves and Wellington Olympic down in Wellington.
Yeah, go on.
That
remind me of it as well, Tony.
Well, look,
you were telling me this. Well, go on.
The crowd that day was amazing.
Yeah.
And that football club is a real football club, Wellington Olympic. They live and breathe football, and they were served up, the crowd, the television audience that day was served up an amazing game to cap off the end of the year. But I guess my question is, what happens in the long term if the incentive that those clubs were playing for is no longer there? Then why are we doing it? Why is anybody doing it? And I don't have the answer to that question. All the games are live streamed now too.
Oh, yeah.
And about a decade ago, when this was starting to become a trend, my point of view of that was caution, in as much as you want 1,500 people to come to your club and then purchase food and maybe a kit or have some drinks. But if they can put the phone next to them while they're in the garden and they don't have to turn up to your football club, that means they're not spending money at your football club. And so there is an impact. And there's no, as far as I'm aware, there's no revenue that trickles down from broadcast in a meaningful way to the football club. So again, while technology is racing ahead and we've got all these new structures, actually, can we keep people coming to matches? Nobody knows.
Okay.
And look what's happened to rugby, right, and NPC. So,
well, netball, which might be even a more aligned kind of example. What was your mum's name again? Sorry.
My mother was Ida Larice Brown.
Is she Brown, Ngāti Hene Brown?
She is a Taunui Brown.
Oh, Taunui, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
From Māpuna.
Yeah.
Gee.
My father was Moses Brown and my grandmother was Meriana Nakohikohi Nepia.
Oh, Nepias.
Mm-hmm.
Are they tied into those ones over at Dargaville way?
I don't have the knowledge to extend beyond my grandparents.
Oh, we're probably related along the way somewhere,
Which very well could be.
Which wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. It's interesting because in those days, particularly in Ngāpui, proud rugby heritage and all that kind of stuff, right? You said your mum was involved in the game. How did she get involved?
Well, she married my father, and that was it.
Okay.
That was it.
Okay.
All my sisters played football. My brother played. They were involved in starting up football teams. And Glencairn was a football club, I think, in the Manawatu that was started up by my parents. I think Saints, which is no longer around, in the 1970s. And my mother played, and I think I might have. I've told this story often, so I may have said it even in the most recent interview, but my mother was playing for a women's team while she was pregnant with me, unbeknownst to my father. So she was playing in goal. The team was getting beat badly. And at my mother was tiny. She was tiny and not showing. And at halftime, my father said, "Right, Ida, this is what's going on. You're going to have to come off because, And she said, "Well, I can't help it." And he said, "Well, why can't you help it? They're easy." And she goes, "Well, I can't help it because I'm bloody pregnant, you Scottish idiot." Or words to that effect. And he said, "Right then, substitution." So I guess in many ways,
no choice.
I was destined to do this, whether I liked it or not, because I was already playing centre half as an embryo.
Playing centre half as an embryo. Oh, I love that. How did she meet your father? How does she end up in the
There's a lot of different stories about that.
I can imagine.
Yeah, so...
It sounds like, as you said, your father would have been good at telling a story, so the truth's somewhere in between, right?
Yeah. I shouldn't say, but he had a different girlfriend at the time, and my mother was a Sunday school teacher and was in and out of the library. My father was a reader, and I believe that's how they met, and then there had to be a conversation with another woman. It was a little bit close to home, but we'll leave it at that. Life.
Life. How does she end up Manawatu, your mum?
My parents moved around. My father took jobs. He was on the rabbiting board in the Hawke's Bay for a time. He worked in New Zealand Rail.
So did you say the rabbiting board?
Yeah, so my father rode a horse, had a double-barrel shotgun and shot rabbits. In the Hawke's Bay back in the 50s, 60s. So they moved away from the north. It became claustrophobic for them. And my siblings were all born on that coast and that part of rural New Zealand. And then what I was always told by them was that Palmerston North was chosen because of its proximity to a university. Yeah. Right, because education was important to the pair of them. Yeah. We were all of us well-read from an early age. And my mother ended up working at the university for most of the rest of her life, from her 40s to early 70s. Yeah. So, Palmerston North played a massive role in my life. People make jokes about the old town, but I wouldn't criticise it for the things I got to enjoy, which was accessibility to sport. I could play sport 7 days a week, and I did. Cricket, football, indoor football, athletics, and it was 5 minutes to everywhere. So you're not in traffic to get to training and any of those things. And they've got some of the best kept grounds in the country, I think. Like Ongley Park for cricket, Turbot Park for cricket, Memorial Park's a great football venue. Scotland was always a bit boggy for football, but it may be different nowadays. I haven't been back for a long time. So, and Palmerston North Boys High School was...
Big school.
Yeah, it was a stage for sport and academia.
Good sports school too.
Yeah, but 1990s, it was a hard place to be. 80s as well.
Mind you, I just want to add that Te beat Palmy Boys and I too. But anyway, I want to ask a really uncontroversial question, okay?
Okay.
Greatest footballer ever?
Wow. I can only give you 5 names, which is what I used to do. It's a Ballon d'Or. You get 5 shots at it, you don't get one. I think it's Messi, undeniably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when he won the World Cup with Argentina in 2022...
That sealed the deal, eh?
That sealed the deal, and that broke him away from the duopoly complex with Ronaldo. I think that set him apart. And Ronaldo now is in his 40s and he's trying to score loads of goals and get loads of caps and play at loads of tournaments, but it feels to me a little bit after the Lord Mayor's show.
But so you say the top 2 are Messi and Ronaldo?
Yep.
Not Maradona?
Third, I would go Messi, Ronaldo, Maradona, Pelé, Cruyff.
Oh, yeah.
There's my 5. And Zidane would be on the edge of that, but then so is Platini and everybody else, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho. Then it's a question of taste. But I think actually, for me, the top 4 is definitely top 5's undeniable. It's those 5 for me.
Greatest New Zealand footballer ever? I think that's probably an easy question.
Yeah, that's definitely Winton Rufer by a long way. I think in women's football for the Ferns,
yes.
A lot harder. I always default to Maya Jackman.
Yes, Maya Jackman.
Always. Yep.
See, it's interesting, isn't it? Maya Jackman, Winton Rufer, both Māori.
Well, this is what we do, right? So in Oceania as well, Tim Cahill, Samoan, Australian, and one of the greatest Australian footballers of all time.
Where was that goal? What was that goal? That bring him over here and kick one. When was that?
It was a volley against the Netherlands. I was there. Right. Yeah.
Were you working there?
Yes, I was with the Australian team at Brazil for that game.
Were you?
Yeah, because we came.
How did you end up with that gig?
Well, because of virtue of being New Zealander, FIFA went, well, they're playing...
Close enough, way go.
Yeah, do you know them? And I knew their media manager, and Postacoglu was a coach.
Yeah.
So I had experience with those guys, and it made it a slam dunk. But I had met Tim previously through the Pacific Games in 2007, and his brother Chris, and I met his father. So to get that role was really useful, and it helps if you've got a relationship. And because he scored that goal, the volley, and I was at the other end of the pitch, and I was standing right in line with it as it came over, and I thought, he's not going to hit this.
Why did you think that?
Well, because only...
Because he's not tall, eh?
No, but a mere mortal's not going to have the technique to do this. So I'm evaluating it if I was under it. If I'm another 100 metres in front of where I am now, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, he's not going to hit that, is he? And then he shaped up, and I thought, he is, and then he hit it, and woof, and it goes. Anyway, it's half time, and so I moved from my position to go to the tunnel, and just as Tim gets there, and we're walking down the tunnel, and he put his arm on my shoulder and gave it a pat, and I looked at him and I went, and he looked at me and he went, yeah, I know. I was like, that was such a great reaction. Such a great reaction. No words. Like it made him so human in the moment, because he shared the astonishment that it went in, although I'm sure he could do that.
Can you imagine,
quite frequently?
Though, I mean, we're on the cusp of this stuff, right? Because even less than you, I think, my athletic endeavour. But just being able to kind of do that. Can you imagine just being able to do that? I would just think I was the bee's knees, I just think I would lose my head completely.
Yeah, why not? Oh, and they do, right? They do when they do it. Like some of them lose the plot completely in their life. This is a very rarefied atmosphere that comes with a lot of reward financially for the athletes. It comes with a lot of responsibility, a lot of fame, but it also comes with a lot of problems. So people do lose it because they're just like you and I. They've come from that. And it can be dangerous for professional athletes in general if they don't have the right people around them. And, I think that's changing. I think if you look at what Professional Footballers Association does in our part of the world, you've got Harry Nata there, you've got Ivan Visilic and Jacob Spoonley and many others who work in that organisation, and so there's some level of support, but the higher up you go on that slippery kind of pole, the harder it gets to stay there. And, there's a lot of temptations, and sadly, there's a long list of athletes and footballers especially who fall foul of that.
But do you mind if I come back to your current role? Do we, as a society, do we value the contribution that amateur sport plays in our communities?
Traditionally, no.
Do you think we're doing better now?
No. Okay. So I would say that now we're in a strange time where technology's played its role. AI's coming in. A lot of the young people playing sport are digital natives. They're growing up with these things. Their values have shifted. And it's a lot harder for sports clubs in general, across all codes, to retain and keep people and find new people to help grow their sports club or maintain it. And so where do we end up in 10 years' time when a generation of people have moved on to retirement or passed away? What's going to be left? Are we going to be able to sustain the current model? I don't know. And, I mentioned the NPC with, when we were growing up in the 80s and Joe Stanley in Auckland, and they dominated everything, and it was...
thanks for reminding the Wellington fan again.
Well, I was one of the two boys too, and it's not great. But that's what they were. They were a powerhouse, and Eden Park was rammed every home game, and it's not the case. Not even the case with Super Rugby. Super Rugby's had to downsize. So these are all symptomatic of, the society that we're living in and the dynamics that are happening within it. And, you could write a thesis on that topic and still not find an answer.
Yep. You got tamariki called?
No, sadly.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, because, sometimes when we get on the cusp of this stuff, media is a good way of getting close to it. You can kind of get some exposure and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you give aspirations for nephews and nieces and kids and go, maybe one day. And which is probably why I stayed in the media, because that's my only access point, because it's not happening with my next generation. But anyway.
No, it's tough. I mean, it's tough for youth, Like, I've had a lot of experience with youth suicide and bereavement, in that space. And so, I'll take you back to what I said about the relationship I had with a FIFA media officer who mentored me, is to try and give something back to help others, That's a thread that runs through everything I try to do. And even though I've not had tamariki, for me, I suppose it's a form of being a kiaititanga, trying to be a guardian for the people that you deal with, young people, and adding value to their experience. But it gets harder, like with the attention span, or staring into a phone, becoming obsessed with social media and the dangers of that. I've seen the harm up front for youth because of these dark rectangles that go around in our pocket.
And the ubiquitous, right?
It's difficult. And, we just have to, I think, if I speak from a Māori perspective, fall back on our cultural values as a insulation against the negative impact of these things, because they're very addictive, just like drugs or gambling or whatever. So,
thank you, Gordon. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. I wish you well with the gig. I really
Thank
do.
you. Yeah,
And I hope it goes well, and I hope everything goes well. In the role, being a general manager of any club is tough.
Yeah.
And it's hard. And it comes with its own pressures and all that kind of stuff. And those of us who just like participating and being audience members and going along being spectators and all that kind of stuff, we just expect everyone to lay it on for us.
Well, that's
the health and safety issue is not our issue, it's your issue. You have to deal with all that and trying to make sure we've got car parks and all that kind of thing. Particularly now in Kiwitea, jeepers creepers, that's changed area from when it was 10, 15 years ago. But, all of that kind of stuff. So I wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in.